Hello, everyone. This is another episode of the Future of Team podcast. My name is James Giroux, and my co-host Dee Teal is here as well. Hi, Dee. How are
Sam,
you?
I'm so well. How about yourself?
I'm great. We've just come back from WordCamp Europe in Torino. We're
Indeed.
recording. We missed last week. We did a bit of planning, and this is our first real episode since then. We've been sharing some stories back and forth about the experience so far. I had a good time. What about you?
I had a great time. I'm still riding the buzz of being back because I don't spend a lot of time in the WordPress community. It was just so great to go back and hang out with everyone that I haven't seen for 18 months while I've been working elsewhere.
We we met some great people. We've had some great conversations. The result of that hopefully will be some guests on the show, some really
Sure.
cool stories. One of the highlights for me was going to your talk at WordCamp Europe and
Fun.
you and Siobhan talking about the gender diversity in WordPress survey that you ran and just some of the data coming out of that. It was really, really good. And I walked away from it with just a lot of self-reflection to do.
Yeah.
First off, as a male, but also just in terms of the things you sort of think are normal, and then you realize are by lack of being intentional about other approaches or other ways of doing things,
hmm
they just are not inclusive or not the best way to actually draw other people, and especially people who identify as female, into leadership and into some of the things that we want them to be in. I was quite happy with that.
I think it's I would just love to have had more men in the audience
Mm.
or I'd just love to see an appetite for people going, what we're doing isn't enough, and we're willing to make the change that's required to actually increase that diversity and an understanding of the benefits of it. I understand privilege is not given up easily.
Mm.
People go, I'm losing here rather than I'm gaining. And so I think the message of how much there is to gain about increasing that diversity and leadership is the message that we need to get out there, rather than, oh my goodness, I'm giving up privilege and people just hanging on by their fingernails going, I do not want to let this go. Yeah. It was a great exercise in pulling it all together. It was late for me because I was a late addition to the lineup, but it was a great experience, and we'll throw a link in the show notes to how you can actually see that talk if you're interested.
Awesome. This week we are looking at the topic of elevating employee engagement and having a think about this whole concept of employee engagement and some of the things that you can do, especially in a remote first organization or in a distributed organization,
Right.
to actually enhance it. Because it can be quite isolating to be far apart from your colleagues, separated by time
Mhm.
zones. It takes a different level of energy and intentionality in order to bridge that gap if you don't have
Right.
that recharge, which even for introverts is important, that recharge of being in person. It's especially for me prescient right now to be thinking about it because we're gearing up for the launch of the next iteration of our team experience index. That's our employee engagement
Mhm.
survey that Future of Team
Right.
puts on every year. I'm saying every year. We did one last year and we're doing one this year. It's
Oh, sure. It
by
was
year
the
three, it'll
inaugural
be
one
every
last year.
year.
Sure.
To try and gauge the experiences of everyday WordPress employees all around the world. And I think that it's probably the best place to start, I think, in terms of engagement, which is this whole idea of getting data and actually getting some baseline input from your team on what their experience is like, even just to begin with.
I agree. I wonder if we need to start with a why is engagement important?
Mm, yeah.
What is engagement? What do we actually mean by it? Because we hear it said a lot. Do we actually know what it means? And how would you actually describe that? For me, it's that sense of how an employee is feeling in their activity and in their work, and how engaged they are with you as a company if you're the owner of a company. I don't know if that's the technical meaning of it. Is that, do you actually have a written what's your
Oh,
what's your take?
I think there's differing viewpoints on it. It is different things to different people. And so you got to be careful with it. Some call it employee experience. Some people call it employee engagement. From a definition point of view, probably where I would land it's like a loyalty metric, right? Or a loyalty barometer or an energy barometer. It's hard. It's a little bit of all of these things. But ultimately what you're after is how motivated are the people in your team to do the work that you have to do today, and how motivated are they to stick around with you for the next 2, 3, 5 years.
Yeah, it's how close their seat is to their desk at the door, right?
That's right. And
Yeah.
all
Okay,
of
cool.
the other things that we might do in engagement are really about figuring those two things out. Because if they are not excited about their people, their direct line manager or overall company leadership, that's an indicator, but it's not the only
Yeah.
indicator. That could be counterbalanced
Yeah,
by great pay or being really
or
fulfilled.
great colleagues.
Exactly. So that's why engagement data is so valuable, but it has to be well-rounded. It's not just how likely are you to recommend this as a place to work on a scale of 1 to 10. It's not.
Right.
It's not just that. It really is nuanced, and that's why it's really important to get data around it, and why I would encourage anyone to do a survey like the Team Experience Index or something similar. We have one at Future of Team called Culture Compass, which is a customized version, just as an example of that you run with your team. You create your own questions. You can do both our Likert statements, which you can benchmark against the Team Experience Index, or create your own, and then short answer questions. And I always like start, stop, continue as a collection of feedback questions for people to do as well. When you get into these kinds of surveys, selecting a box doesn't always tell the whole story. So being able to provide that ability for your team to give a bit more long form answers or short form answers to some of the things that are going on, or to be positively or negatively triggered by the questions that are being asked, where you click a box, and then being able to actually dig deeper into that. If pay is a big thing, and start might be, hey, we like to see you start benchmarking these roles against other companies in the ecosystem to see where we fit, and giving us that information so we feel better about ourselves. Right? That could be something that comes up.
I think a big part of actually making sure that you've got the data is that you actually know where you're heading, right?
Yeah.
So let's get this data. Let's see where we're at now. And then we got this sense of, in the spectrum of things that contribute to employees' sense of engagement with the company and with their work, what we actually know that we have to work on. And we'll go through, I presume, the list of things that affect that, and what we would be wanting to measure in order to get that sense of what do we need to adjust and change, or where do we need to shift our sails to get us heading in the direction that we want to go.
It is. And sometimes you don't know. I think one of the interesting things I've found with WordPress companies in particular is everything's fine, right? The whole building could be on fire behind them, but the leader just goes, everything's fine, right? And
well, I'm engaged and I love what I'm doing, and so everybody around me must be feeling the same.
I have a sense of ownership. Nobody's coming to me with complaints. I show up to all the meetings. We get to do these 3 activities that I've decided by myself in a corner that everyone's going to do and love, and everybody says that they love. You can get yourself into what is it, a cone of silence or something like that. There's me aging myself with Get Smart.
Best TV show. Anyway, carry on.
But you can get yourself sort of in this echo chamber where you hear back what you want to hear and not what's actually being said, right? Or what needs to be said. And as a result, not have any clue of what direction you need to go. And collecting data or doing these types of surveys can actually be a tool to help you take concrete steps forward. And when you can work with a partner, and I highly recommend this, not just because we sell this as a service, but because this, in my opinion, is the best way to do it, is to go with an outside, anonymous, third-party team to actually run this engagement survey on your behalf, because it protects your employees from the fear of anything they say coming back, right? And it also, for you, means that you're going to get honest input and feedback, because the people providing it to you aren't trying to coddle you either. They're going to provide you with the feedback that's been given.
This is what they really think.
What they really think. And hopefully, if they're a good tool to be using, recommendations on what you as a team can be doing in order to move forward, and a couple of goals that you can have for your team in order to move the needle on engagement. That's engagement. One thing we wrote down, and I'm just going to move on from data a little bit now here, is you said this, and when we were doing our planning, and I thought this was really great. If you're trying to tick the engagement box, you're doing it wrong. What did you mean by that?
It's the motivation for why you're actually doing it. If it's, we hear people talking about engagement, we should probably do engagement. I think the thing for me, and it was funny because I'd forgotten I'd said that, but as you were talking through that stuff, I think the thing for me is you have to be settled enough in yourself that you're willing to hear negative feedback, that you recognize that you could do better, and that your company could be better if you actually engage with this stuff, and be willing and able to make that change. So for me, ticking the engagement, it's the motivation of why you're doing it. I'm ticking the box because people would do it, because people say that we should do it. But that's not actually engaging with this sense of continuous learning and continuous improvement, that I am prepared to take the good with the bad, have a look at all of it, sift it through, and appreciate that change needs to happen to make this better. And so it's that willingness to change, I think, is the thing that I feel like needs to be critical for people. And it's all part of that whole continuous improvement attitude of being prepared to fail, get it wrong, but also be ready to make the change to get it right going forward.
When you said it, the first thing that I thought of was that typical, stereotypical maybe manager who exists for lists, right? Maybe you've experienced that. You've had a manager or people leader in your career whose goal in life is to check the boxes on their list that they've made for the day. And when they speak to you in your one-on-ones or in your team meetings, it's less about what's actually said and more about moving through the agenda items and making sure that they get through. And for them, the satisfaction is having gotten through every item on the agenda in the allotted time and being able to move on. I sometimes think of that when you said it. That was the first thing that came to my mind, was that maybe stereotypical kind of manager who's just like, you don't actually care about me. You don't actually.
That's the key, isn't it? It's that sense of, oh, well, I have to tick all these boxes. You're not seeing me at all.
Yeah.
You're not engaged at all with what I'm saying to you. This has no impact at all on you. Oh, I guess it's probably also that quintessential difference between hierarchical versus servant leadership. And I think because I'm so imbued with servant leadership, which sounds arrogant, it's not, I don't mean it to sound that, but that sense of, hang on, this is how we lead, is that we serve. That just it doesn't even compute for me. Anyway.
Now that we've gone through a little bit of the overview, we've talked about the importance of data and not just ticking the box. The next section, I think, is actually a lot of fun. And you can thank ChatGPT for helping us out with this. And we're just going to react to a couple of these statements. But I wrote to Chatty and I said, Chatty, what are some things that you think people can do, and what should they not do when it comes to creating an environment for engagement? And now, luckily, all of these things are things that were on my list as well, so it's fun. But I just thought maybe we could go through 3 or 4 of these different examples, and we've got 8 to choose from, but I'll let you select the first one, the one that stands out to you, on what we can do to really elevate employee engagement at work. and we'll have a quick little chat on that.
Well, I'm going to just kick off with the one that's first on the list, which is foster transparent communication. Things don't happen in a vacuum. The good things don't happen in a vacuum. And when you're not clear on what's being communicated, or there is no communication, or there isn't clear communication, particularly from leadership, people will write their own story. It's not even in leadership, in relationships, in any situation where you're unclear about what's going on, about what is happening behind the scenes, and you are seeing actions and activities that are happening out there, but you don't actually know what's going on behind it. It hasn't been clearly communicated what's going on here. Then you write your own story. Mm-hmm. And your story may not be correct. You'll make a bunch of assumptions. A lot of them will be negative because you don't know what's really going on. And that sense of being super clear from the top about what's going on undermines some of those negative or incorrect or inaccurate stories that people tell themselves.
And a good example of that is, and it doesn't have to be big and formal. We've talked, I think, in previous episodes about the value of things, all hands meetings or quarterly get-togethers where you just talk about the company goals and what's going on. But even just something as simple as a Slack update. Hey, folks, just wanted to give you a quick update on how we're progressing toward our revenue targets, our goals for this quarter. We're hitting this well, we're doing this well, we're doing this well, or we're missing the mark on this one. We've decided either we're going to put more attention to it or we're going to let it go. Even just those kinds of things are really, really helpful for people. And it helps everyone feel at least like they're going, because you're right. We all have our own, RuPaul likes to call it our inner saboteur. Like that person that is our critique is always calling us out, that what is it, imposter syndrome, all of those things mixed together. Yeah. And that can be quite a bad place to get as an employee if you're not getting any positive input or real input from your leadership about what's going on. And it can push you away. It can give you the, what have I heard? The Sunday scaries is a term I've been hearing lately, where you get this anxiety or apprehension about going to work on Monday morning because you're not sure what you're walking into.
Yeah. I think some of the great benefits of actually having that communication is just that sense of people knowing what's going to happen next, and the breadth of I know there's so many companies that rely on P2 around here's open visual, what's happening. You can see that monthly or weekly, even updates from the CEO about what's going on. Breadth, I think in a company, and the opportunities to actually ask questions. Certainly been in organizations where we would have that regular all hands, but it wasn't just a download, it was also a what's on your mind. And so those areas where you are unsure, you can actually anonymously or otherwise ask those questions and get the answers, get the actual answers about what's going on.
I'm just pausing there to give us a little bit of a break because we've only got about 4 minutes left on this free Zoom. I forgot about the 45-minute cutoff. Yeah. What I'm going to suggest we do is stop here. Give me a quick minute to shut this call down, and then I'll send you a new Zoom link in Slack for us to use.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'm glad.
Oh. All right. I'm not going to do... Oh, I thought that was way too quick to come in. All right, I'm not going to do another what to do. I'm going to do a what not to do. And I found one on the list that for me is what I'm guilty of. I figured better to call it out now. And this is to neglect personal connections. I am the kind of I lean into task. We've talked about this before. I lean into task. You lean into people as sort of your natural way of working. And for me, it's an exercise of intentionality to actually develop personal connections with people. And I don't know, it's funny because I've done these MBTI things and I'm supposedly an INFJ, which is the rare one. But I'm probably very barely inside the line of INFJ and probably more of an INTJ in some situations, because this is one where I go to task rather than feel often in work. But neglecting, if you do not want to have an environment that is engaging for your team or that makes your team feel great, then neglect personal connections. And here's the example. Keep all communication strictly business. Who needs to know their colleagues as real people with interests and lives outside of work?
I mean, it is funny, absolutely, but it's scary how true it is. I don't know, when I first started being a manager and actually managing people, there is a click or a shift that needs to happen in the sense of we're having a one-to-one conversation, and it is very easy to keep leaning into the work, so that you end up, how's the week been? What's been going on? And you're not actually asking or interested in what's happening outside of work for people. And that's definitely an adjustment to make. But I read somewhere that people who burn out because they don't have connection with the people that they're working with. They're focused on the task. And so that sense of building up that sense of relationship between you and your team members and between team members and each other is critical for your team to flourish.
Was I going to say, I think as well, there is maybe a bit of a generational thing here, because my wife and I are born in the same year. We're 4 or 5 months apart. We're not that different generationally that way, but she's the youngest in her family, and she's got older siblings who are very much into Gen X and her, her dad's a farmer and all that kind of stuff. And I'm the oldest in my family. Everyone's younger than me and definitely leaning more millennial. And I find this very interesting. When we first, and it could be personality as well, but when we first started dating and talking about things, the line of separation for her between work and personal, or work and the rest of my life, was bricked up 10 meters high. It was just that was the line. And meanwhile, I'm, used to talking to younger millennials and, feeling all the things and doing all the things. I was very accustomed to that and just sort of having that blend. But I've realized even more as I've, navigated circles with folks that are older than me, is that they tend to lean more into sort of keeping personal and keeping work, or they have these 3 or 4 permissible subjects that are tiny toe dips into their personal life.
What are we watching on the telly? Are you watching House of Dragons? Is that one of them?
That's not what I'm watching, but ask me.
I'm not, and it's what's been talked around at the water cooler at work, and we nearly ended up in spoilers on the weekend because I haven't ruled out watching it.
I have a couple of things. I've got Korean dramas. You can ask me about Korean dramas. You can ask me about knitting.
Stop it. I did not know this.
Really?
I did not know this about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
See, this is the thing, awesome. Right? Yeah, knitting. I'm a huge knitter. It's just so funny.
I love that about you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So that's one of my allowed topics that I talk about. I talk about whatever, but often I have 2 or 3 go-tos of these things. Just I know for you, it's the F1, right? It's cars
but it's my ridiculous car. It's not necessarily the Formula One, but I have friends who, my ridiculous car. Building, I don't knit, but I do knit, but I don't knit. I can knit, but I don't do it. I build teeny tiny model houses. Yep. But it's not something we talk about at work. We talk about TV at work. But it's interesting because different workplaces that I've been in have different flavors, and definitely where I've been in the past, there was a lot more water cooler action about what's going on. And whereas where I am now, we are very focused on work. So I think the leadership and the extent to which I guess leaders in a company are open may also filter down into the boots on the ground workspace, the shop floor, as it were.
I think it's a psychological safety thing as well. That if your environment isn't so secure, you're less willing to be vulnerable or to be open about those things that may be something other people look at you and go, wait, what? Korean dramas? You seriously are into Korean dramas? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
Why? Where? When? How? I will say, though, I did an interview a couple of months ago, and that was one of the first things about myself that I told them when I did an introduction, and they were like, we have a whole Slack channel full of people who love K-dramas. You will be right at home
That's
here.
amazing.
And I was like,
That's really
okay,
cool.
I'm ready.
Let's go. Where do I sign?
But it just goes
I feel like we're getting a little bit sidetracked.
We
but,
are,
but
I think it's a good point when you talk about
that's the thing.
engagement. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that it feels like that when you're in that one-to-one call with a direct report or with your manager, that these are the parts. I mean, I just feel like I just went straight to task then and go, oh, hang on, we're off. We're having this, lovely moment of connection. But I'm like, oh, hang on, we need to get back on task because we've got work to do. So yeah, you just got a really good prime example of what that
of how that goes. But
how that works. Yeah.
One of the things I think that separates good leaders from great leaders is the ability to put the work aside and focus on the people.
Yeah.
That's actually, in my mind, one of the big separators, because we can talk about work anytime. That's easy. It's hard to get personal. It's harder to be vulnerable, to open yourself up, to be not for everyone, at least for me as a leader. I would say that that's what separates the good from the great, is the ability not just to develop personal connections, but to have genuine care for your team and genuine support of them and their endeavors and the things that they get up to at the weekend, and be authentically excited about it.
I think too, when seasons end with a company, a reflection of how well a company is able to do that may also be the extent to which those relationships outlast your tenure with a company. And I look at my previous employer, I have one-to-one appointment that we never cancelled. So every 2 weeks, we still get together and catch up. We don't talk about the work that we're doing together anymore because we're no longer with the same company, but we do talk about but the whole relationship totally transcends all of that. And that there's a number of different calls that I still have in my calendar of different durations. Some are 6 weeks apart, some are closer together, still endure, which is a reflection of that workplace in particular.
All right, you're up. You get to pick a what to do, or if you want, you can pick a what not to do.
I can pick a what not to do.
Yeah, go for it.
Let's not overload on meetings, or even the meetings thing is interesting. Let's talk about what not to do. The Chatty's little example is fill up everyone's calendar. Again, this is what not to do, just to be super clear. Fill up everyone's calendar with back-to-back meetings all day, every day. After all, who needs actual work time to get things done? So cheeky, Chatty, so cheeky. But I feel like there's a balance to be had with meetings. And I know, particularly in remote workplaces, where it's often a default to let's jump in and have a meeting about it because we're struggling to find that connection if we're talking about things offline. But also, I feel like there's a sense in which meetings also need to have some of that personal touch as well, particularly when you're working remotely. When it's finding it, there's definitely a fine balance to be found. I know when we were, and it would depend on the meeting too, and I guess the outcomes of a meeting. I mean, you're not going to have a meeting with the client and have an icebreaker at the top of the call. I mean, you've got stuff to do. The client's busy and has got time. But when we were talking about when we used to have regular regional meetings, having 10 minutes at the top of that call to actually connect personally really makes a difference to how people feel about working in that region, and that sense of we are a team and a collective in this region doing this work, and not just a group of automatons ticking off all of their boxes. So don't overload on meetings, obviously. That goes without saying, Chatty, but also balance your meetings so that there is that sense of not just ticking the boxes in the task-oriented exercise, but there's also that sense of being able to connect with each other and build those relationships, not just one-on-one, but also as a group.
Absolutely. You need those connections. I think when I hear this, I think of the pressure of knowing you have things to do or things that are on your plate that have to get done, and you're team leads or the company as a whole not being conscious of that and overloading you with communication, right? And the pressure that comes with, okay, well, now I've got 8 hours to get 62 hours worth of work done because I've spent
Right.
the last week and a half in back-to-back meetings doing all these things. I have looked, one of the interesting things, so I think people leads are a little bit different. They generally will have more meetings because their responsibility is to do direct connections with folks and be sort of
Right.
in that space. That is their role. But I can remember in some roles I've had where, yeah, I was literally going from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, trying to figure out, okay, I've got 10 minutes in between this meeting and the next meeting. It's enough time for me to hit the loo, grab a drink of water, and I've got 4 minutes left. I can send out this quick email that hopefully moves this project forward. And that kind of like pressure and intensity of how am I going to get this done? How am I going to get all of the things done that I need to get done? And that's really,
I think this is also a reflection on the sense of when you're in an organization that has multiple different areas and your work intersects with multiple different people who have their agendas and the things that they need to get done. And there's a lack of being able to see how everybody's competing demands on you intersects and reflects on your capacity and ability, because you're focused on, I need James for this and I'm going to get James for this, but there's 7 other people that are doing that same thing. And I don't have an answer for how you broach that, but that sense of when you are working with someone and need that from someone, also not just keeping your focus narrow, that you can't look at the wider picture and go, okay, there's 7 of us here that need James's attention or Dee's attention or whoever's attention. How can we actually consolidate and work together to maximize what we need, rather than bigger picture thinking? Not everybody defaults to that.
if you want to get really practical on meetings, it's probably a whole episode on its own. But I wonder about things capping the number of hours any individual contributor is supposed to have in a week and give them permission to decline anything over and above that. So
yeah, or having a meeting free day. We used to have meeting free. We used to be able to choose a meeting free day during the week. Choose Friday, not having any. Oh my God, best day ever.
The best. Having a meeting free Friday. We did the same thing in some of my other workplaces, and it's something I even bring in to my agency work and some of the other things I do. Friday, just not having meetings as a catch-up day is just fantastic. But another thing too, I think for leaders in particular, is to recognize that if you are stressed about not being able to get things done because your diary or your calendar is full of one-on-ones and meetings with other teams and liaising back and forth, that actually is your job and you don't need to be as stressed. Mm-hmm. Your role, your output is your ability to have those meetings, those one-on-ones, taking care of your team, unblocking for them, making sure they've got what they need to be successful. And I think that is one thing that sometimes, especially first-time managers or first-time leaders, often get stuck in, is that I'm not able to get anything done, but the output of the team is a reflection of you getting things done. That is your done.
Yeah. Having a one-on-one, being able to talk through what's going on for someone is tangible output.
Yeah. It's a total mind flip, though, for somebody, especially if you're coming from a role as an individual contributor and then leading a team, right, that's doing the same thing, where maybe you're the most tenured or the most experienced, the one with the most skills. It's hard. Maybe we'll do one more because we're going long here. But I'll do a what to do. And the what to do that I've got is to recognize and reward accomplishments.
I love this one so hard.
I cannot tell you how important it is in an environment where you want to see engagement grow to recognize and reward accomplishments. Recognition. When I first joined Envato, there were 300 people there. I'd been working there for a year. They'd just done an employee engagement survey at the beginning of the financial year, about July, August. I showed up in September, and they sat the whole company down and they said, okay, we've just got the results back from our employee engagement survey. And the thing that we've noticed in that is people are not feeling recognized. We are going to literally transform the entire company and put a ton of emphasis as a people team into programs and things that you can do as leaders and as individual contributors to recognize the folks around you. We had recognition tools that came out for us. We actually used 15.5 as a tool where you actually go in and you recognize 3 or 4 people every week for something they've done. We would have recognition days where they would just bring in a coffee cart for us, right, and do things like that. We would have random meals that would show up. There was just these things that all of a sudden they would do. And then we would also look at the promotion structure. And they started giving us the tools to actually be able to promote people within our teams and do different things like that, so that people were getting recognized and rewarded for all of the different things that they were doing. And it's such a pillar for me of engagement and of culture that it's one of the things that we've made a pillar of the future of team. Our framework that we have, our open team framework, right? It is intentional recognition, because it's not something that just happens, right? It is intentional.
Yeah.
And in other places I've worked, I see it happen too, whether it's tacos in Slack. There's a program in Slack you can get that's tacos, where you just give tacos to people when they've done really cool things. Very simple, very straightforward.
Yeah.
But again, it's just doing something, right?
Yeah. Well, we used an HR tool that had kudos that you could send to somebody, and that could come from anyone. It could just send it, hey, I saw that you did this the other day. This is how it made me feel. This was amazing. And it cross-posted in Slacks, people would, and P2, I think. So people would see, and to be honest, in my, which I think we've talked about before, in my recognition doc, I saved the screen grabs of the things that people had said. I think one of the things that's interesting is not everybody is motivated the same way to do great work, or motivated in general. When you look at people's intrinsic motivations, for some people, the recognition is a lot higher than there is for other people who would probably find some of that disconcerting. But that sense, when there is nothing for anyone, definitely changes the tone. I mean, I've had different times where I've just done something good and nobody else around me is going to recognize this. So stuff it, I'm blow my own horn, and I'll throw up a siren in the Slack channel and go, hey, me and the team really just got this thing launched, and it feels slightly awkward, and you're sitting there going, well, I'm tooting my own horn, but if nobody else is going to do it, or nobody else is tooting the horns of any of the team around me, I think there's definite uptick in benefit of being able to do that. And for the company to have structured ways to do that and to make that easy and seamless, and to be doing it on a regular basis, definitely affects the tone of the place around you, for sure.
The key is not to be that person that's ticking the boxes, where recognition is ticking a box, but where it's authentic and meaningful and intentional. 15.5, after a while, when I've got to give a shout out to 3 people this week, and I have no idea who's done anything. And I mean, you're scratching your head going, okay, well, I'll thank this person for this and that person for that. It starts to lose its meaning. There is something there, I think, about rolling out tech without training your team or building that value in as something first that you need to think through and consider as a leader. If we had not had those conversations and training early on about the importance of recognition, just rolling out 15.5 and giving required kudos to 2 or 3 people a week, that would have not worked out. Cool.
I think the benefit, or I think there's an element of that, of if it's codified into a set number of things that you have to do at any given time, it's oppressive. But when it's the flip side of that is it does actually make you mindful and looking out for it in some senses as well. But yeah.
We've got a lot more of these things you can do. But if you've got access to ChatGPT, I would highly recommend you go and prompt Chatty and see what they come out with. A lot of these things are things that I quite align with as well, so especially the cheeky ones, the cheeky what not to do's. Ignore time zones completely and be vague about expectations and provide no growth opportunities. All of these things are just, they're the things I react to right away. But
it sends you right off. But then you look at the things that are good and go encourage professional development, create virtual social opportunities. We could do an episode on that. I did an amazing thing that Human made that absolutely loved around social opportunities. Empower teams with autonomy. There's some great things to dive into there, and could probably do another couple of episodes about it.
We could. But we have to end because if we don't, we'll
I have to go to work,
and people have to get going.
8:15 in the morning.
and I've got to go and hang out with my family, who I haven't seen for a couple of days. Anyway, on that note, thanks everyone for listening. Feel free to subscribe and like on YouTube. That we would love that. Let us know in the comments as well, whether that's on our website or on YouTube. I think those are the two places where you can do that, or even on X. Let us know what you're thinking and your feedback on some of these things. We'd love to get your input on that. And stay tuned for more cool stuff, more fun episodes coming soon.
Thanks See you later, everybody.